Hey guys, happy Friday. I was going to do a totally different video, but then I remembered what today was. October of 1985. Let's go back to October 1985. You're asking, Jen, what is October 1985? Well, the story goes like this. It was October 10th, 1985. I had just turned 7. My grandparents gave me some birthday money, and around that time, around the 80s, the Care Bears were very popular. Most little girls and boys probably wanted to get their hands on the coolest Care Bears there was in town. I lived in the city of Sarnia, and where I lived was in a townhouse complex, and not far from my townhouse complex was a plaza. It had a drugstore, shopping plaza store kind of thing. It was called Big V. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put a description down below, and you can check out what Big V was all about back in 1980 through 85 and longer. Well, eventually the store changed, and it's our Shoppers Drug Mart today. I was told they got bought out. That's the story I was told. They might have just had a name change or something. I don't really know. So, getting back to my story, it was, I don't know exactly what day we went up to the Big V store. I had my heart set on getting Rainbow Bear. I thought it was beautiful. It was pink and it had a rainbow on the tummy. And my heart was just set on, I wanted to get this Rainbow Bear. Well, that Rainbow Bear was sold out. They didn't have any, but they did have Sunshine Bear, which I am today grateful and very thankful that I did. I still have Rainbow Bear, Sunshine Bear. I don't know why I was thinking Rainbow Bear because that's what my heart was set on, but I do have Sunshine Bear, and I have kept her all these years. It has a meaning, and I will explain. I did pass it down to my daughter, which I'm hoping she'll keep, and maybe pass down to her daughter and tell them the story behind it. As I mentioned, my birthday was October 10th. Time went on. It was the 25th. I remember we were getting ready for bed. My parents were sitting on the couch in our living room, and my sister went off to bed early because she needed more sleep than what I do, and my parents didn't want us staying up chit-chatting and stuff as we shared a room for many years. I'm 40 today, and my sister will be turning 37, I believe. She's going to be turning 37 or 38 November 13th. So my sister went off to bed. I was sitting with my parents. I remember I was sitting on my dad's lap, and I don't know why. I remember vividly saying that, one day we're all going to die. I don't know why I have that in my memory. I don't know why that seems to be very important to me. Well, I went off to bed when it was my bedtime. I said goodnight. I said I love you. I probably gave kisses. And 7-year-old Jenny went off to bed. That's what they called me. I was my mom and my dad's Jenny. So I went off to bed, and I didn't think nothing of it. I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard commotion and I saw some light. I got up and the light was on in the bathroom. I looked. My dad was on the floor. I didn't know why. I didn't know what was going on or what happened. All I was told from my mom was, go next door and get the neighbor. Go next door and get the neighbor. So I did. The neighbor came over, talked to my mom. My sister and I went over to her house and stayed the rest of the night until we knew what was going on. October 26, 1985. Brian Edward Briggs, a resident of Sarnia, Ontario, passed away in our bathroom from a heart aneurism. A heart aneurysm. That day, my life shattered so bad. My best friend and my dad was gone. I was his little girl. My dad never thought he was ever going to get married. He never thought he was going to own a home. And he never thought he was going to have children. But he succeeded. He got married. They owned a home for a short time. And he had 2 amazing little girls. And things changed that day. I felt that because I was the oldest, I needed to step up and take charge and help my mom, help take care of my sister. My sister doesn't know too much about my dad. She has very little memory, and she knows things from pictures, but I know a little bit more. My dad was a hard worker. He worked hard for our family. He took very good care of us. He had a great sense of humor. He was funny, crazy, and he just knew how to make people laugh. He liked sports, mainly baseball that I knew, and he could do voices. The most favorite one I used to love him doing was Donald Duck. And I thought it was so cool. He did like to drink beer. Now, not too bad, but the occasional beer. You know, he was a casual drinker. Nothing too serious. But we have some really great fond memories, good memories with him. I was told a few things, and this is what I was told. My dad was pushed through school. They thought my dad couldn't make anything of himself. They basically thought he was dumb. He had a disability. He had trouble reading and spelling. And I was told, I don't know how true this is, but I was told he could read little words, but he couldn't read the big words. Or he could read the big words, but couldn't read the little words. I don't know. He remembered stuff by pictures. So when my mother would tell him to go get stuff, he knew what she was talking about. My parents met through my grandmother. My mother worked at a grocery store and met my grandmother Olive, and she said that I have a son that you might be interested in meeting. So she introduced them, and then that's when it all started. She wanted to go on dates with them, but they weren't going to have it. My grandmother was kind of pushy, and she always complained. It was the way she was raised. Her mother didn't want her in the kitchen. Her mother didn't want her to do certain things. Everything to my grandmother, it came from a can. Whether it was stew, chili, soup, it all came from a can. My mother, on the other hand, her mother made everything from scratch. Fresh, homemade kind of thing. The way I like to do stuff, which I've started doing over quite a few years. Chili isn't chili if it's not homemade. Stew isn't stew unless it's homemade. Soup, well, I like it both, homemade and from a can, as long as it's Campbell's. I support Campbell's because they're good. But anyways, yes, as I mentioned earlier, my dad passed of a heart aneurysm. Back in 1985, there was not much that they could do as technology and things have changed now. I don't know exactly how many people now that have had aneurysms that have been able to be treated and saved, but they couldn't save my dad. I honestly think if my dad was alive, we'd probably still be living in Sarnia, and I don't know where we would exactly be right now. The hospital has changed names. The city of Sarnia only has the one hospital now, as it did have two for many years, but now they only have the one. And I do believe my dad worked there for at least, I'm gonna say, 5 years that I know of. I'm gonna have to double check because I have his pins that they gave him for the service in the years that he worked there. I am thinking he gave 15. It might be less or it might be more. I'm not sure, but he did a very good job of taking care of my mom and my sister and I. And we lived a great life until the day that he passed. Things were tough after. We moved from the townhouse unit that my dad passed away in the bathroom. It just was very uncomfortable for my mother. We did not go to the funeral. You're probably going to ask and wonder why. My mother thought it would be too hard for us to go. So when the funeral went on, I stayed with my older cousin, his younger sister, and then me and my sister. We all stayed together, and we just, did what we had to do. I've dealt with this for 40 years, and it's hard. Christmas was a hard time for me when I first got married. We couldn't afford a Christmas tree, and I kept thinking of when I was a little girl. And I don't know if my dad sent Brian to me or sent me to meet Brian. I don't know what it was, but whoever did, I am so thankful. If you look up the name Brian, it means strong, and Brian was strong. My Brian is our soul and our rock, and he's the rock of this family. And I want to thank the person, or the persons, or the angels that were watching out for him when he was in the hospital. Because if we would have lost him, I would have lost it. And I'm thankful for every day that he's here. And Dad, I want to thank you. I also want to thank you for having Mom meet Jim. Jim, I know you're listening, because I know you're up there too. And we miss you every day, just as much as we miss Brian every day. And I do believe if it wasn't for Jim, we wouldn't be where we are today. Jim came in our lives at the right time. He had lost his wife around the same year in 1985 as we lost my dad. But we lost my dad October 26th. And I'm glad that I know the date. And now, looking forward, I can take this time to remember and have a moment of silence, or just look at some pictures and think about the good times we had with my dad. I could share some stories, but I think that'll be for the next video. I will continue this on, and I will share some stories that I remember that were fun. My dad, I believe he might have been stubborn. When my parents decided that they were going to get married, my grandmother wanted the wedding when she wanted it. My grandfather had said, if you would have waited 2 weeks later to when you were getting married, you could have had the wedding of your dreams. Now, my mom had a beautiful wedding. It wasn't that it wasn't. I'm very thankful for what she did with part of her wedding dress. Her wedding dress was so long that she had a baptismal gown created so that myself, my sister, who were both baptized in that dress, I got a hold of it when I knew I had a little girl. And I did what I had to do with it. I took it to the dry cleaners and I got it cleaned and fixed, and my daughter wore it. And I am forever grateful that I had that opportunity to pass it down, to have her wear it. And I am hoping and praying the next little girl in the family to come is going to be able to wear that dress, and it is going to continue to be passed on. Now, my fingers are crossed. I'm not hoping anything, but as long as it's in the family, I'm going to try to pass it down. My parents got married. They bought their first home. My dad was the first house he saw, the first house he bought. But back then, they were on something called a conflicting mortgage, which my mom does not recommend. Do not be on a conflicting mortgage when your mortgage goes up and down every certain time or whatever. But it came to a point that they wanted to get rid of the house, and we were moving to a townhouse. And that townhouse where we lived at just happened to be the townhouse where my dad passed away. My mom then felt creeped out after a while and said, okay, we can't live here anymore. And we moved to another townhouse complex up the road on Indian Road of Sarnia, Ontario. It was 635 Indian Road. I don't even remember the apartment number, but I just knew it was 635. So we lived there, and that's when our lives changed, when we met Mr. James Lewis. And I'm going to wrap it up here, and I will continue on the next video and share with you guys some fun stories that I can remember with my dad, Brian. I was his little girl, and he was my best friend. I just remember many times sitting on the steps of our home, waiting for him to come home. Many times where I was told to wake him up from a nap because it was dinner time. And, yeah. If you could say a little prayer for me today and make my day go a lot better, that would be really great and appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and listen. And I know I'm not alone, but I needed to share this.